Hi everyone, my name is Burgess and I'm here today to talk to you about scaling software quality at Xero, our move from on-premise to cloud. But let's start with what is Xero where I work. So it's a cloud-based platform designed for people in small business and their accountants and bookkeepers. It operates as a software as a service model. So we're already in the cloud, where customers pay a subscription fee to access the platform each month. By doing this, what we're doing is we're automating heaps of that tedious financial work, giving our customers greater confidence in their numbers and more time back so that they can focus on the things that they really enjoy. We've got lots of locations globally around the world, and here you can see some of our offices. Our HQ is based in Wellington, which is also where I'm based. I'm the lead product manager in the security team at Xero and a Sonar champion in 2025. That picture you see there is a photo of me with my daughter in London in January this year. So we were just about to head in to see The Lion King, and if you like musicals, I can totally recommend The Lion King. It's a fantastic show, really, really worth going to. So let's have a look to what we're going to chat to you about today. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about SonarQube at Xero, so where we've come from, going to look into why we considered a move to cloud, and spoiler alert, obviously we did it in the end, how we planned and executed the rollout, some of the benefits we've had, and then what are our next steps going to be. But to give you a full idea of our story, I need to take you back in time a little bit. So the history of SonarQube at Xero. 7-ish years ago, maybe a little bit longer, it was before my time, we started to use SonarQube Server at Xero. So this was introduced as our on-premise solution for doing things like code reliability, maintenance, and code coverage reporting. Our practice team introduced this and teams adopted it if they wanted to, and they built scanning and coverage reporting and that into their build pipelines. In 2024, so fast forward a few years, the SonarQube product at Xero moved into the security teams area, and we took over maintaining and supporting it for the business. We really wanted to find out how secure the code that people were writing was and how we could track it and make sure that we weren't adding any additional customer risk by having badly written code. But there were definitely some challenges with what we took over. So at this point, the security team had inherited all the infrastructure related to SonarQube Server. We had some internal experts that we could talk to if we needed to, but it was a very steep learning curve to pick up something that had been running for a while, and it had a few quirks. We spent a lot of time getting up to speed to be able to maintain the system and keep it going. We found that the knowledge was becoming quite siloed to one or two of our team members because there were so many little intricacies. And being a small team, it was becoming quite a burden on those one or two engineers in our team. They were becoming very much experts in the area, but they were spending the majority of their time looking after SonarQube Server. Something else we noticed is that not all teams were using it, and to add it to their pipelines, they needed to do quite a bit of work to make sure that their scans were working, that the coverage reporting was working how they expected, and that everything was hanging together nicely. And basically that was time they didn't have. They were busy fixing things, creating new features for our customers. The platform had also suffered from some organic sprawl, so there were lots of different configurations being applied. It wasn't well documented which team owned a particular project within the platform. So there was quite a lot of configuration weirdness going on there. In summary, the maintenance burden was quite high. We didn't have great reporting about what was happening with the security of our code. It was hard to onboard, and we had limited visibility of the code that teams were writing. So, a move to cloud. So let's look at this move to cloud. In 2024, soon after we took over, we started to look into this because we realised it was a bit of an issue for us with their additional maintenance. We were very keen for the move, but at this point in time, there were some concerns about feature parity. SonarQube Server has a lot more bells and whistles than SonarQube Cloud does, although it's catching up. But we went out and we talked to our customers, we talked to our engineers, and we asked them, what features do you really need? What things do you use when you're using SonarQube Server? And it turns out that not all of the bells and whistles were required. And there were a few workarounds and bits and pieces and things that we could do to make sure that the cloud experience was similar to what the engineering teams were getting out of Server. So roll on 2025, we finally got our hands on SonarQube Cloud. That took a bit of work. We had to build a business case and make sure that we could onboard teams that potentially weren't open to changing their build pipelines. Once we had access to the cloud service, we formed a cross-functional team. This was across some of the security teams and also across our platform teams. So within platform, we have teams that look after quality aspects. So a good example of this being quality gates in SonarQube. And then we've also got the build and deploy teams who look after our products that we use to build software, things like TeamCity and GitHub Actions. We made a plan. We had kind of two types of team to cater for. So there were the teams that were already using SonarQube Server and the teams that hadn't even looked into it or hadn't tried to use it in the past. To help us with that first set of users, one of the things that we did is we actually had some very engaged teams that were kind of like SonarQube Server experts, and we asked them for help, and being the wonderful humans that they are, they became our beta customers. So we onboarded them early, we gave them a bit of guidance, we gave them a bit more kind of like one-on-one working with them to help them move across. And this really helped us with discovering the areas that we hadn't thought of, and it allowed us to write documentation that was useful for everybody across Xero. This meant before we even tried to roll it out, we already had a really good idea of questions that were going to be asked and a great set of documentation. To help us with the second set of users, the ones that hadn't been on SonarQube Server, we really needed to communicate the change. And I do have to admit to a little bit of a mistake here. Something that happened near the beginning was that we accidentally turned on auto-analysis across the whole organization. So we managed this with some very quick follow-up communication and the assurance that although teams were starting to see these reports, they weren't being blocked in any way. It was the first time maybe they would have been introduced to this type of static analysis within their code bases at Xero. So having a little extra information pop up in their PRs was concerning for some, but once they understood what it was, teams adapted pretty quickly. Aside from that, we had a really smooth rollout in February 2025, so we hadn't really had the tool for all that long. We onboarded all of our target repositories, so it was just a custom script. We called a few of the Sonar Cloud APIs, and all of a sudden we had 3,000 repositories onboarded from our GitHub organization. We might have triggered a few rate limits during that time, so there's something to watch out for there. So once we'd done this all, we continued to communicate to our teams, especially the ones that needed to migrate across from Server. At this point, we hadn't turned off our Server instance. It was still running. It was still scanning things for those teams that were pointing their pipelines to it. Teams had about 9 months to move, and that might sound like a lot, but for some it was really down to the wire. On November the 17th, 2025, we turned off SonarQube Server. This was amazing. All of that maintenance burden had gone for us. Having said that, I was still extremely nervous on that day because I was worried that we were going to break all of the build pipelines across the whole business. But it turns out our communication had worked quite well, and we definitely managed to move the majority of our customers off SonarQube Server, and they had no issues at all. We did get a couple of people, someone who even asked a month later, why isn't my build working? And it was you obviously haven't been paying much attention to all the communication that's been going on. So let's have a look at the benefits. AI ready. So one of the things that's become much more of a big deal for Xero and probably a lot of companies globally is that we're moving all of our engineers to using all types of AI tooling to help make them more productive. But one of the things that comes with this is that we've now got another tool that's introducing code into our ecosystem. So it's very reassuring to know that we've got the coverage across all of our repositories that matter to us, and that all of our code has been checked and scanned just to do that additional sanity check around the AI tooling and make sure that the larger quantity of code that's potentially being produced is well checked and well maintained. Faster onboarding. We've had really fast onboarding. It's quite easy now for us to onboard new teams into SonarQube Cloud. We have some using the automatic analysis feature. If you've come across this, it's kind of like a shallow scan because it doesn't do the code coverage reporting, but it does give us the information that the security team really, really needs, which is how many security issues have been found in this piece of code and where are the hotspots. And the automatic analysis has been really, really helpful with that because teams no longer need to change their build pipelines to get things to work and to be scanned. So that's been super helpful. Also with that onboarding, we've written a few little scripts that call APIs and things to make sure that it's a very seamless onboarding for the team. The GitHub integration has been really great. So when we turn on that automatic analysis for a repository and it just has a project running in SonarQube Cloud, engineers get immediate feedback in their PRs. Maybe if something's not quite right or they need to have a look at a particular area of code. It will tell them if the quality gate has failed. It will tell them if new issues have been raised. And having the feedback directly in the pull request is very, very useful to our engineers. So that integration between GitHub and SonarQube Cloud has been invaluable to us. We've definitely got tighter controls now. So our SonarQube server instance, like I mentioned before, had been handed around and had been in use for quite some time. There was a sprawl of admin permissions and we were a little bit scared to mess with them, to be honest. So having everybody move across to SonarQube Cloud has meant we could reset all of that. So only the people who need elevated privileges have them now. We've also aligned our quality gates across all of our product teams so that we're consistently reaching any targets that we need to reach. And then the last one there, which is probably the one that's most dear to my heart, is the maintenance burden. And this has been the biggest benefit to the security team. So we continue to look after and maintain the SonarQube product, but we no longer have to maintain that ECS cluster, that database backup, that test environment, that production system, and all of these types of things. And it's meant we've got maybe 1 or 2 engineers back doing the more interesting work in the security space. All right, so looking to the future, what are the next steps and where are we going? So there's still some feature parity to be reached with SonarQube server. We're not completely there, but we're working on a few bits and pieces. We're also keeping the product team well engaged. We're getting really, really good at raising feature requests with the SonarQube Cloud team. So thanks, SonarQube. We're about to start a project to tune our SonarQube Cloud configuration to make it fit the working styles of our teams a bit better. So this will cover things like analysing and tuning some of the rule sets to make them more Xero specific. Sometimes we're getting false positives back and we're trying to identify the patterns in this so that we can reduce some of that noise and sort of turn that down a bit for our engineers. And we're also hoping that by looking at this and analysing this, we'll be able to help our developers a bit more with maybe areas where they could be improving and we can do like sort of more company-wide education. We've got a little bit of work to do around our portfolio. So we've started to do some work in this area, but we're aiming to make it very easy for our upper leadership, like our general managers, to go in and use those dashboards, find out maybe where some pain points and things are, find out potentially which teams are doing not so well or which teams are doing very well with maintaining their code. So we're hoping that if we structure our portfolios well and just make that really clear, then it's going to be obvious. And help out that sort of upper layer. We also need to do a little bit more work around onboarding. So just making sure that our documentation is still up to date, information is available for people when they see like SonarQube, when they come across one of those little things in their PRs, just so it's not really as jarring when you see these things turning up. We also struggle a little bit with maintaining permissions for our engineers. What we do is we have a little process that runs in the background and it aligns permissions between SonarQube and, between SonarQube and the GitHub repository. But we use GitHub as the basis for this and it sort of like syncs back and forth. There's a little bit of work that we could do in this space. It's pretty good and it's working fine, but there's just sometimes if there's like a repository that have lots and lots of people that have access to it, it gets a little bit hard for the process to keep up. So that's where we're at today. We managed to migrate and onboard over 3,000 repositories across SonarQube Cloud. We now have about 3,500, so we've added some more since that time. This is across all of Xero's global engineering teams. We're now actively triaging and notifying teams when security issues arise, and we also have a greater confidence in what we're pushing to production, whether it be written by a robot or one of our awesome engineers. Thanks for listening to me today. I hope that you enjoyed having some insight into Xero's journey to cloud, and enjoy the rest of the summit.